Welcome. Tonight, I'd like to take you on a quiet journey back in time to Tudor England. But not to the palaces of kings, nor the courts of nobles. No. Tonight, we're stepping into the hushed corners of an ordinary home. Perhaps one of a yeoman farmer or a clothier's family, in a village nestled between green English hills sometime in the early 1500s. We won't find roaring feast halls or galloping horses here. Instead, we'll explore something much more intimate. Something quiet, slow, and tenderly human. We're going to learn what it was like to sleep and to wake in Tudor England. Let your breathing slow as we step into stillness. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture the rolling English countryside, bathed in late evening light. Hedges line narrow lanes, and low stone walls separate fields that have been tilled for generations. The land feels old, settled, patient. A small village sits at the end of a dirt path. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys. The smell of peat, livestock, and recently baked bread rides the cool air. Our focus lies in one house, timber-framed, with a thatched roof, slightly sagging with age. Its beams are darkened with soot and smoke, and its door creaks softly on its hinges. The people who live here are not famous. Their names are not written in books. They are mothers, fathers, children. They mend, they cook, they harvest. They sleep and dream just as we do. In their world, sleep is not a luxury or an inconvenience, it is a rhythm. It follows the turning of seasons, the hunger of harvests, and the hum of the human body. Tonight, we step gently into their shoes. Not to disrupt, not to dramatize, but to sit quietly in their world. To observe with care. To rest with them. We'll move slowly through their evening. We'll listen to the quiet rituals of winding down. We'll lie on their humble bedding and feel the slow drift into segmented sleep. We'll explore the subtle sounds of night, the fears and comforts, the superstitions and the silence. And as dawn breaks, we'll stir again beside them, yawning into a new day. This story is not one of battles or glory. It's the story of slowing down, of stillness, of letting the edges blur as sleep draws near. So if you're listening to rest, to doze, or simply to quiet the thoughts of your own day, you're in the right place. Let the fire crackle softly in the background. Let the owl's call fade into the distance. Let us begin. Let's imagine it's late evening. The sun has sunk behind the woods. Shadows stretch long across the pasture. Inside a small timber-framed home, the air grows cool. It is autumn, the kind of dusk that comes early, nudging gently at the corners of day. The hearth glows faintly, embers from the day's cooking still warm, casting a soft orange shimmer across the clay floor. Smoke curls faintly upward, making its way through the smoke hood, clinging for a moment to the low ceiling beams. You can smell the day's end. A faint smokiness mingles with the sharp sweetness of onions, the earthy dampness of trampled soil from shoes left by the door, and the musky scent of wool drying near the flames. A wooden cup on the table holds the last of some weak ale, brewed with care by hands worn from labor. The family has eaten. Their meal, a thick pottage, perhaps made with barley, leeks, and the last of the root vegetables, was scooped from a shared wooden bowl. Spoons carved from ash or horn rest beside half-eaten crusts of coarse rye bread. A mother scrapes the pot gently, saving tomorrow's start. She uses a cloth to sweep up scattered grains. The children sit cross-legged on the floor or lean sleepily against the wattle wall, their small fingers tracing the ridges of the daub. The room is dim but not empty. Instead of candles, which cost more than most can afford, they use rushlights, thin reeds dipped in mutton fat, set into holders carved from scrap wood or clay. These burn unevenly, casting shifting shadows that dance across the walls. They crackle faintly and emit a faint smell of charred tallow. A cat stretches near the hearth, yawns, then curls into itself. A baby, already asleep, lies swaddled in a low cradle. It creaks slightly as the eldest daughter rocks it, more from habit than necessity. The eldest son, barely 10, oils the family's single iron pan with a cloth. His fingers are blackened with soot, and he moves slowly, more from sleepiness than reluctance. He sets it aside, careful not to clatter. Outside the small shuttered windows, the sounds of village life diminish. A dog barks once, far off. An ox bellows softly in a barn. The church bell, perhaps from a distant chapel, marks the passing of another hour. Back inside, the father stacks firewood beside the hearth. He wears a loose linen shirt, its sleeves rolled to the elbows, his hands dark from a day spent digging potatoes. He kneels for a moment, staring into the glow of the embers. Perhaps he thinks of his day. Perhaps he doesn't think at all. The silence of evening is not absolute. It is filled with subtle texture. The soft creak of wood, the quiet hush of bare feet on packed earth, the occasional pop from the fire, the quiet sigh of a child half asleep. On the table rest a few everyday items: a ceramic jug for water, a wooden bowl with scraps to feed the pigs, a bone needle tucked under a cloth, forgotten until tomorrow. Social life is not separate from domestic life here. There is no drawing room, no parlor. The shared space is kitchen, dining room, bedroom, and workroom all in one. Its layout is plain: the hearth central, the beds to the side, tools and clothing hung from pegs or rafters. Conversation is hushed, not from formality, but from fatigue. A few final instructions from mother to daughter, a half sentence from child to father. A murmur of good night. A cough. There are no books here. Perhaps a psalter, tucked away for Sunday. But mostly, words live in memory. Rhymes are sung softly to children, learned by repetition rather than reading. Evening routines are unceremonious yet structured. Clothes are hung or folded. Water, if it is not too cold, is used to wipe hands and feet. A single bucket stands near the door for necessities during the night. The fire is not left to burn unchecked. A ceramic cover, or sometimes ash, is used to bank the coals. It will smoulder till morning, ready to be stirred back to life with the poker. The mother pulls a blanket around her shoulders and sits for a moment, watching her children. It's a rare pause in a life of constant movement. Outside, the moonlight falls on thatched roofs and sleeping hens. The wind whispers against the shutters. A lullaby of silence. Inside, the rhythm of the day slows to stillness. One by one, the family eases into their nightly rest. The house does not fall silent all at once. It sighs. It hums. It settles. And in that settling, in that slow descent into shadow and warmth, we find a moment, not unlike our own. A day is ending, and the night, patient, gentle, has come to claim its place. Let's imagine it's late evening. The sun has sunk behind the woods. Shadows stretch long across the pasture. Inside a small timber-framed home, the air grows cool. The hearth glows faintly, embers from the day's cooking still warm, casting a soft orange shimmer across the clay floor. You can smell the day's end. A faint smokiness mingles with the sharp sweetness of onions and the musky scent of wool drying near the flames. Maybe there's a wooden cup on the table, holding the last of some weak ale. The room is dim but not empty. Instead of candles, which cost more than most can afford, they use rushlights, thin reeds dipped in mutton fat, set into holders carved from scrap wood or clay. These burn unevenly, casting shifting shadows that dance across the wattle and daub walls. A cat may stretch quietly near the warmth, blinking slowly. A child rubs her eyes. The house is winding down, each breath of air becoming a little softer, a little slower. The silence of evening is not absolute. It is filled with subtle texture. The soft creak of wood, the sound of a spoon being placed into a bowl, a low hum as someone tidies the hearth. It is the music of life winding down. Let's turn now to the bed. A central object in the room, and in daily life. Not merely a place of rest, but often the most valuable possession in the home. For a modest family, the bed frame is crafted of local wood, oak, if they are fortunate, or elm. The structure is sturdy, but without ornament. Ropes are crisscrossed beneath to support a mattress. These ropes stretch over time and must be tightened regularly, giving rise to the expression sleep tight. The frame and ropes were often made by the head of the household or a local carpenter. The ropes, typically made from hemp or flax, required skill to weave tightly enough to support a body comfortably, yet allow some give. On top lies the mattress, not made of foam, of course, but a sack sewn from rough cloth, filled with straw or sometimes chaff from the harvest. The stuffing was carefully prepared. Straw was cut to size, sometimes aired and replaced regularly to avoid dampness and pests. Some beds had seasonal adjustments. In colder months, families might add extra straw, or even additional coverings made from wool or fur to trap warmth. Summer bedding was lighter, allowing for air circulation and cooler rest. Dried herbs such as lavender, rosemary, tansy, or rue were often sewn into the mattress or tucked between blankets. These served both practical and symbolic purposes. They were believed to repel lice and other pests and to bring peaceful, sweet dreams. Blankets were thick, woven of wool, sometimes patched together over years. Sheets, if present, were coarse and changed infrequently. Linen was a luxury reserved for wealthier households. Many simply slept in the clothes they wore during the day, wrapped tightly for warmth. Beds were often shared. Children might sleep side by side, sometimes head to toe, to conserve heat. Privacy was limited. Larger homes might have curtains around the bed for modesty, but most did not. Symbolically, the bed was a place of rest, but also a site of intimacy, family bonding, and even healing. Ill family members would remain in bed for days. Weddings often involved a blessing of the marriage bed. Care for the bed was a daily ritual. Ropes were tightened, bedding aired during the day, and the area swept of dust and pests. A clean, well-maintained bed was a source of pride and comfort. Beneath the bed, the floor was often bare earth or clay, swept and scattered with rushes to absorb moisture and dirt. Rugs or mats were rare, as were slippers. In this simple, handcrafted object, we find the essence of domestic life, a blend of practicality, care, and the human desire for comfort and security. As we lie down in that bed, imagine the quiet, the textures, the slow changes of night. There is no electricity here, no soft hum of machines, no bright clock faces. Instead, the room is alive with delicate, subtle sensations. The coarse wool blanket, rough yet warm against the skin, wraps around you like a protective shroud. It carries the faint scent of lanolin and smoke from the hearth. Beneath it, the mattress of straw shifts gently, the stalks tickling softly as you move. The air holds a chill, especially near the floor where the earth cools. But the body's warmth rises, creating a quiet cocoon of heat close to the skin. Your breath forms small clouds in the cold air before fading. The ceiling above is low, with heavy beams darkened by years of smoke, and the walls close in, lending a comforting sense of shelter. Outside, the wind may brush the shutters, a soft murmur blending with the faint creak of the house settling. You hear the slow, steady breathing of those nearby, family members drifting in and out of dreams. Occasionally, a soft sigh, a murmur, or the shuffle of straw disturbed. Emotionally, sleep here is a gentle surrender. It is not a sudden plunge, but a gradual letting go of worries, of aches, of the day's labor. The mind quiets, thoughts dim, replaced by the steady pulse of breath and heartbeat. In this stillness, time seems to stretch, folding back on itself. The past, present, and future blur into the space between waking and dreaming. The textures shift gently through the night. A cold toe seeks warmth. A blanket is pulled tighter. A child murmurs a dream. The straw rustles like dry leaves. In this moment, the world has grown very small. Just the warmth of the bed, the smell of wool, the soft tick of breath. And with every breath, every slow blink of heavy eyelids, the body moves deeper into rest, preparing for the slow, segmented sleep that will carry it through the night. Sleep in Tudor England often came in two parts. The first, which began soon after sunset, would last for several hours. Then, there would be a waking, gentle, not jarring. People stirred in the darkness. This interlude was called the watch. During this time, one might mend a sock, say prayers, or share quiet conversation. Some might write, if they could. Others tended a child or stoked the fire. In rural areas, some even visited neighbors under moonlight. Historical records and diaries from the period reveal small glimpses of this practice. In one 16th century letter, a woman describes how she used the watch to knit stockings by the dim glow of a rushlight, savoring the quiet moments after a long day of fieldwork. Another diary entry recalls a man sitting beside the hearth, reading aloud a psalm softly to his wife before they both returned to rest. In East Anglia, it was common to prepare bread dough during the watch, letting it rise slowly by the embers so it would be ready for baking come morning. In the West Country, shepherds might check on their animals, guided only by starlight. The watch was also a time for reflection, sometimes lonely, sometimes comforting. It was a pause where the mind could wander, where prayers could be offered, or simply where the body waited patiently for the return of sleep. The house was still, but not dead. Just suspended, alive in hushed motion. There was no pressure to return to sleep quickly. This was time to be used, or simply observed. Eventually, a second wave of sleep would come, often deeper than the first, more restorative. And so, once again, the family drifted into quiet. Another descent, as the house and its inhabitants re-entered the stillness of rest. The dark held mystery. It was believed that night belonged to the unknown, spirits, misfortune, and sometimes death. In many parts of England, the devil was thought to roam between midnight and cockcrow. Superstitions flourished in these hours. To protect themselves, families relied on small rituals, softly spoken prayers, and protective charms passed from one generation to the next. These habits became the anchors of comfort in a world shaped by shadow. It was believed that night belonged to the unknown, spirits, misfortune, and sometimes death. In many parts of England, it was thought that the devil roamed freely between midnight and cockcrow. This time was known in some regions as the witching hour. To protect themselves, families recited prayers. Familiar words, softly spoken. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, bless the bed that I lie on. It wasn't uncommon for children to sleep with a sprig of rowan beneath their pillows, a tree thought to repel evil. In the north, small pouches filled with salt, iron nails, or dried herbs might be hung at the head of the bed. In Cornwall, families would etch a protective symbol, a six-petaled daisy wheel, above the lintel. Crosses might be carved subtly into bedposts. Shoes were placed with the toes facing away from the bed to confuse any malevolent spirits that might try to follow one's soul in dreams. Charms and amulets passed through generations. A worn piece of parchment with a verse from the Bible. A ribbon tied with a knot and a whisper of protection. Folk remedies varied from county to county but carried the same deep-rooted hope that what lay in the shadows could be kept at bay. Children were taught bedtime rhymes with hidden warnings or blessings. If you should wake before the dawn, pray to see the morning come. Dreams themselves were treated with reverence and caution. A bad dream, especially one involving falling, teeth, or floods, might be shared aloud in the morning and interpreted by elders. These were believed to be messages, signs, or omens. But fear was not the only force that shaped the night. Comfort came through ritual. A small warm stone placed in the bed, heated in the hearth. A lullaby sung in a low, almost whispering tone. A mother's hand, brushing a child's hair aside before she settled down herself. The repetition of gesture, of sound, of belief. These rituals didn't promise safety, but they offered peace. And in the quiet that followed, there was space to breathe. Even in darkness, there was warmth. In fear, there was familiarity. And through tradition, there was trust that the night, however long or uncertain, would pass. The dark held mystery. Superstitions flourished in these hours. It was believed that night belonged to the unknown, spirits, misfortune, and sometimes death. To protect themselves, families recited prayers. Familiar words, softly spoken. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, bless the bed that I lie on. Charms might be hung above the door. Crosses etched quietly into wood. The threshold swept. The latch checked twice. These rituals brought comfort, not through certainty, but through rhythm. The repetition of gesture, of sound, of belief. And in the quiet that followed, there was space to breathe. There is no alarm clock, no abrupt summons, only quiet signs. A rooster's distant call. The soft grey light slipping through wooden shutters. The rustle of straw as someone stretches beneath woolen covers. A slow unfolding, not a sudden start. Pale grey light slips through the narrow cracks in the shutters. The cool breath of morning creeps into the house. The hearth is only embers now, its warmth faded into the stones overnight. A muffled rustle. A cough. The creak of wood as one of the parents rises, barefoot on cold clay. They pull on a simple woolen overshirt or apron, worn soft over years of use. There is no sense of urgency, just a natural unfolding. The hearth must be stirred back to life. A child, still bleary-eyed, fetches kindling from beside the door. A spark is coaxed into flame with care. Thin curls of smoke begin to rise again, carrying the first smells of the day, peat and ash, and eventually something richer. Water is poured into an iron pot. A small handful of oats is added. Perhaps there's a bit of yesterday's pottage left, thickened and reheated. No lavish breakfast, but enough to warm the stomach. Morning tasks unfold slowly. A cloth is wetted and wrung out, used to wipe hands, faces, and the back of the neck. Washing is quick, practical, and done with cold water unless there's time and fuel to heat it. In wealthier households, a wooden bowl or ceramic basin might be passed around, but here, each takes a turn with what is available. Clothing is adjusted, retied, or refolded. A mother may braid her daughter's hair, fingers working steadily in silence. A father helps the smallest child into a tunic. Feet slip into worn leather shoes or remain bare if the day will be spent inside or nearby. Light grows steadily, painting the inside of the home with soft gold. Outside, hens cluck impatiently to be let out. A dog, alert now, stretches and noses the door. The world beyond the walls begins to call. Breakfast is taken simply and together. A crust of bread dipped in warm broth. A cup of small beer passed around. There are no plates, just shared bowls, wooden spoons, and hands. As the meal ends, the atmosphere shifts. Chores wait, milking, fetching water, sweeping the threshold. The eldest child is already tugging on a cloak, ready to follow his father to the fields. The transformation is subtle but complete. What began in stillness has become movement. Private turns to public. Intimacy gives way to duty. The fire now crackles. The air smells of wood and steam and wool. Voices murmur. A window is opened to the morning breeze. The new day has begun, not with fanfare, but with quiet resolve. And so life, once more, flows forward, gently. There is no alarm clock. No abrupt summons. Just signs. A rooster calling in the distance. A pale grey light slipping through shutters. The muted cluck of chickens, and a stirring from someone in the next bed. A child yawns. A pot shifts. Someone rises to tend the hearth. The fire is coaxed back to life. The day begins again, not with haste, but with a quiet gathering of motion. Perhaps a pot of pottage is stirred. Perhaps bread is broken in silence. And life, once more, flows forward, gently. And now, as we follow them into the quiet night, perhaps you too feel the day loosening its grip. Sleep, in Tudor life, was not merely a bodily need. It was a cycle honored by time, nature, and faith. To rest was to trust, in the roof above, in the fire banked low, in the prayers softly uttered. It was not idle time, but sacred stillness. The night was believed to be a time of dreams and spirits, both divine and wayward. A proverb from the period tells us, "Night is the nurse of thoughts." And indeed, as the house settles and the fire fades, thoughts rise like smoke, curling slowly into the space between sleeping and waking. In some households, a small verse might be whispered at bedtime. "Let not the night winds trouble thee, nor wicked dreams thy spirit see. God's light above thy head shall keep, and angels guard thee in thy sleep." The symbolic weight of night extended beyond sleep alone. It was a daily return to the womb of quietude, a laying down of labor and noise, a humble surrender to powers unseen. In the deepest darkness, people imagined renewal. Just as the seed sleeps before it grows, so too did the soul find solace in rest. Listen now. The fire crackles its final embers. Straw rustles as a child turns. A cat shifts on the hearthstone, sighs, and stills. The air cools gently. The house no longer moves. Outside, the fields are wrapped in frost or dew, depending on the season. Trees stand in shadow. Smoke no longer curls from chimneys. The world exhales. Inside, the rhythm has slowed to almost nothing. A single breath. A heartbeat. A whisper. Time itself seems suspended, as if the world pauses with the sleepers inside that timber-framed cottage. And perhaps, as you lie here now, listening to the hush of a long-ago home, your own breath begins to mirror theirs. Deep and soft and slow. Thank you for joining me. May your sleep be deep and untroubled. May your dreams be gentle. And when the morning comes, may it arrive quietly, like the first blush of sun over an old thatched roof. Good night. And now, as we follow them into the quiet night, perhaps you too feel the day loosening its grip. The breath eases. The eyes soften. The mind wanders. May you find your own peace, in the rhythm of an older world. A world of straw and shadows, of whispered prayers and warming embers. Thank you for joining me. Good night. As dawn's first pale light seeps through the narrow workshop window, the world outside still wrapped in the hush that precedes day, we step inside the 15th century Flemish tapestry workshop. Here, in this low-beamed room tucked behind brick houses, the day's first ritual begins, gathering the wool. Pause and breathe in. The air holds the faint tang of dew and hearth smoke, mingled with the warm earthiness of yesterday's finished tapestry still lingering overhead. The floorboards beneath your feet are smooth from decades of bare wooden soles. A pair of hand-woven baskets sit side by side in the corner, ready to receive the day's fibers. Fingers trailing along the cool, rough-hewn lintel of the door, you push it open. A gentle creak blends with the soft thud of wood against wood. Inside, darkness waits to be illuminated. Candles, dipped and dried last night, stand at the ready upon a narrow shelf, simple tallow candles in hand-thrown clay holders. The weaver moves silently. Each step is deliberate. No clatter, no rush. The loom rests against the far wall, but first comes the wool. 3 large sacks of raw fleece rest near the hearth, one plump with cream-colored merino wool, another mottled in silvery grey and charcoal flecks from the marshland sheep of West Flanders, and a third bag coarse with brown flecks from a recent lambing season. Reaching into the first sack, the weaver draws forth a handful of fleece. Between thumb and forefinger, it yields airy tufts teased free from sticks and stale straw. Feel the weightless softness of merino fleece, tender, springy, as though gravity hesitates to claim it. Kneeling beside a low bench woven with rush seating, the weaver spreads the fleece across a plank of worn oak. Light from a newly lit candle dances across the strands. Shadows slip between fibers, revealing slight variations in cream, almost white at the tip, deepening to pale gold closer to the fleece's base. The weaver separates the wool into 3 piles: ultra-soft fibers for delicate motifs, slightly coarser strands for sturdy outlines, and the stiffest bits set aside for later washing and blending. Next comes combing. 2 combs studded with metal tines cradle the fiber. The weaver draws a small clump of wool between them, applying gentle tension as the combs part knots and chaff falls away. Each pass aligns the fibers parallel, transforming fleece into smooth roving. With each motion, focus deepens, the mind drifts free of distraction. When the roving is smooth, it is peeled from the combs and coiled onto a slender wooden peg. Some fibers, particularly coarse brown flecks, require washing. A trough of warmed well water mixed with soapwort and ash lye stands by the hearth. Handfuls of roving are submerged, pressed beneath the surface in a rhythmic up and down motion. Over minutes that stretch into serene meditation, the water turns cloudy and the fleece hums with new softness. Each bundle is then laid on a linen cloth and gently pressed to remove excess water. As the sun's first beams filter in, the weaver moves to a north-facing window to assess each roving's true undertones. An ivory roving held against the frame reveals a whisper of silver. A tuft of grey wool seems almost blue in this light. These observations guide choices. Which roving will form soft petals, which will define forest shadows. Each coil is tied with a linen strip and labelled on parchment, W1 cream, G3 light grey, B2 ash white. The bundles rest in straw-lined trays until the dye master arrives. At last, the weaver sits on the rush bench, eyes closed, breathing in the soft echo of morning. A distant church bell, a market wagon's low hum, cattle grazing in a nearby meadow. In this quiet moment, every fibre feels chosen with intention and care. Mid-morning light warms the workshop as we turn from wool gathering to nature's alchemy, preparing dyes. In this chapter, we move slowly through each step, gathering madder roots, woad leaves, weld blossoms, walnut husks, and oak galls, coaxing hues from plants and bark, sinking into the rhythm of transformation. On a side table, woven baskets await. At dawn, apprentices return from fields and forest edges with roots knobby and earth-stained, leaves still dewy, petals tied with grasses, husks cracked open, galls collected. Each material is sorted with reverence, a gift of the earth destined to breathe color into wool. First, the dye master inspects madder roots, tapping and peeling them to reveal vivid crimson cores. He stacks the bark strips and splits knobbly roots to expose the richest pigments. Nearby, fresh woad leaves are torn from their stems and crushed in a mortar. Weld flowers are plucked to release ochre petals. Walnut husks are smashed and sieved. Oak galls are redded. A parchment scroll records each weight and measure, ensuring consistency. Madder root, 3 pounds. Woad leaves, 5 handfuls. Weld flowers, 2 pounds. Walnut husks, 4 pounds. Oak galls, 1 pound. 3 copper cauldrons perch over the hearth. 1 for reds, 1 for blues, 1 for yellows and browns. Cold well water fills the first cauldron, madder bark is added, and the flames ignite beneath. Slowly, the pot warms and tiny bubbles rise, carrying earthy aromas upward. The dye master stirs in measured turns, listening to the murmur to judge its heat. The second cauldron welcomes the strained liquid from an overnight woad vat, a dark green that already hints at deep indigo. Ash lye is sprinkled in, and the dye master stirs until green effervescence shifts toward blue. The third pot receives weld petals, then walnut husks and crushed oak galls, each addition turning the water from straw yellow to chestnut brown. Over hours, the master tests bundles of damp roving in each pot, lifting them on skewers and watching how color infuses the fibers. Coral reds deepen to brick, teal blues turn near indigo, buttery yellows mellow to mustard, auburn shifts to sepia. If a hue skews, the master adds alum, lye, or iron sulfate in minute increments, each tweak recorded by apprentices. When each bath reaches its ideal tone, the pots are removed from flame, strained through linen, and poured into shallow earthen jars. The jars cool until their contents shine clear and vibrant, each labeled madder red, indigo blue, sun yellow, brown oak, and stored by the hearth, ready to transform the roving bundles. As the final jars settle, we pause to honor the journey, roots and petals steeped in simmering patience, earth's perfumes coaxed into living color. The workshop now glows with possibility. The loom stands in the workshop's far corner, its oak posts rising nearly as tall as a man, mortised together with age-blackened joinery. An inscription reads AD 1447, and notches along the posts whisper of decades of use. Run your fingers along its polished grain, cool and fragrant with resin and ember warmth. First, the warp beam is readied. A horsehair brush clears dust from its surface, and a leather strap shows fine cracks from years of holding tension. Fine linen cords are measured and cut, 240 threads for our panel, each tied with a slip knot to a wooden peg. With gentle turns of the beam's handle, the cords wind neatly in layers separated by cloth strips to prevent slippage. Above, the harness frame holds thin metal heddle rings. Using a brass hook, the weaver guides each linen cord through a heddle eye, then lowers it to the cloth beam's weighting stick. Groups of threads are allocated to each heddle according to the tapestry's pattern, 4 through one, 6 through the next, creating a grid of future sheds. Fingers move slowly, focused on preventing twists. At the loom's front hangs the reed, a comb of metal slits. The weaver lifts each warp thread from its heddle and slips it through the next available reed slot, spacing them evenly. A wooden wedge is driven between the warp beam and its cradle, tightening cords to a uniform tension. The cloth beam is rotated to balance the pull. A gentle pluck on each warp thread produces a bell-like tone. Small adjustments ensure every thread resonates alike. Next, the full-scale cartoon, a charcoal drawing of vines, blossoms, and borders, is unrolled, refreshed, and framed on thin wooden strips. It is pinned behind the warp, its lines visible through the linen cords. The weaver secures cartoon and warp with parchment tabs. Finally, tools are arranged. The beater hangs within reach, shuttles filled with dyed bobbins rest on a shelf, a bowl of cold water sits nearby for dampening warp threads, and a scrap of cloth is ready to protect unwoven areas. The loom stands poised, a silent promise awaiting the first shuttle pass. The weaver lifts a shuttle wound with pale cream wool, damp from its dye bath. With a deliberate flick, the shuttle threads the first shed, trailing wool through the warp's parting. A pause, then it glides back through the opposite shed. The beater closes its comb-formed teeth against the new pick, packing wool firmly against the cartoon's canvas. Thus begins the easy continuum: shuttle through, shuttle back, beater taps. Each cycle aligns the weaver's breathing to motion, inhale as the shuttle advances, exhale on its return. Slowly, the empty warp transforms into a field of cream. Glancing behind the warp, the weaver sees a delicate spiral drawn in charcoal. Adjusting entry points, the shuttle traces curves that emerge as outlines. At the cue for shadow, the weaver switches to a steel-grey weft, sliding the new shuttle precisely where darker tone begins. Two shuttles perform a quiet duet, cream and grey weaving together into softly rounded petals and distant forest depths. Weaving demands consistent picks, up to 12 per inch. Tension is monitored by plucking warp threads. A gentle turn of the beam's wedge restores any slack. The rhythm deepens focus, clearing the mind until only shuttle, beater, and breath exist. As the sun climbs, light shifts across the tapestry face. Tiny glints on newly woven picks suggest where highlights can accentuate form. Without halting momentum, the weaver integrates these insights. A single pick of pale wool here, a slight tuck there, deepening the tapestry's dimensionality. Visitors, apprentices, or the master may pause by the loom. The shuttle rests on its peg, the beater holds its last beat, and the weaver greets each interruption in hushed tones before resuming the quiet song. When the first panel nears 2 feet of height, marker rows indicate seam lines. The weaver weaves a sturdy border of brown wool to secure warp ends. Scissors trim stray tails. The weaver steps back, admiring the completed panel, a testament to hours of unhurried dedication. At the church bell's 12 strike, the shuttle completes its pass and rests. The beater swings inward, and the loom exhales its day's first break. A quick sweep of stray fibers with a horsehair brush clears the bench and floor. The weaver dips hands in a bowl of well water, rubbing palms to remove oils and pigments. Around the hearth, a low bench draped in an indigo-patterned cloth seats the weaver and 2 fellow artisans, the dyer and the carder. They pull wooden stools close to the embers' glow. From a basket come thick rounds of rye bread, a block of fresh goat cheese, and a small flask of light ale. Each bite is deliberate. The bread's crust crackles, the cheese yields creamy tang, ale's thin bubbles kiss the tongue. Conversation drifts in low tones, a fresh batch of weld flowers to harvest, a neighbor's newborn lamb, yesterday's startled rooster in the dye shed. Laughter is gentle, shoulders relax, and the workshop's busy hush softens into communal ease. Outside the hearth alcove, other craftsmen share modest meals. Children peek in, offered crust scraps, then dart away with muffled giggles. The midday lull expands to embrace the entire workshop community, each craft, each life, woven together in shared respite. Fingers flex, shoulders stretch, and the weaver leans back against the bench's warmth. Apprentices clear dishes, mindful not to disturb the stillness. Before returning, the weaver washes hands again, inspects roving trays, and accepts a linen scrap to wipe the bench clean. A slow inhale, a slow exhale, and feet return to the loom. With the cartoon's rosebush awaiting translation, shuttles line the bench, deep burgundy for shadows, soft pink for petals, verdant green for leaves, dark olive for stems, pale grey-beige for the stone ledge. The weaver breathes deeply, centering on the first bud. Using dark olive, a single pick traces the rose's outer contour. Each pass is half speed compared to broad area weaving, matching the focus of sketching by candlelight. When the outline stands clear, the weaver shifts to pale pink, layering 3 tones, mid-pink for base, deeper pink for shadow, almost white for petal tips. 10 picks lay the base, 6 pick shadows, 4 pick highlights. The beater's taps blend edges into a seamless gradient. Shading employs hatching, alternating picks of burgundy and deep pink to form velvety shadows. At transitions, the weaver weaves patterns of 2 dark picks, 1 mid-pink, maintaining a soft ramp of tone. Fingers brush the motif, feeling its even surface. Leaves and stems emerge next. Bright green bobbins fill leaf bodies in mid-green, then lighter highlights trace central veins, darker ribs follow fine cartoon lines. A narrower shuttle navigates tight leaf edges. Stems and thorns use dark olive on a finer bobbin, shaping thorn points with precision. A ladybug appears, a 1/4-inch red body marked with evening black. The weaver uses half picks, each shuttle pass entering only partway across the shed, crafting its tiny shell. Scissors trim stray fuzz, and ends tuck beneath adjacent picks. Throughout, tension is tested by plucking warp threads. Wedges are adjusted to maintain a bell-like tone. Where colors meet, interlock joins twist 2 wefts together, locking them side by side without gaps. The slight bump disappears under subsequent picks. Halfway through the rose motif, the weaver pauses, tracing petals with fingertips and closing eyes in quiet satisfaction. Then background picks in pale sky blue fill the space around the rosebush at 8 picks per inch, accentuating motif edges with tidy needle touch-ups. Occasionally, the patron's revisions require charting a larger petal on the cartoon. Charcoal lines shift. The weaver extends border picks and realigns shading picks with calm acceptance. When the final pick sets the rose motif complete, 4 petal layers, 3 greens of foliage, a tiny insect, and sky blue surround, the shuttle rests. Scissors trim, a last beater tap compacts picks, and the motif glows softly in half light, a testament to patient artistry. The weaver lifts the final shuttle, winding pale grey-beige wool to weave the tapestry's lower edge. Shuttle through shed, beater tap, each pass deliberate. With the last pick, shuttle and beater rest. Fingers smooth the final row into perfect alignment. Small shears trim every stray tail close to the surface. A horsehair brush sweeps the face in long, overlapping strokes, lifting dust and loose fibers. The tapestry's colors appear fresher, its texture uniform. Edges are vulnerable, so the weaver binds top and bottom. Strips of sturdy linen tape wrap around raw warp ends. A running stitch anchors the tape center, and evenly spaced overcast stitches loop the tape's edge around the warp. At corners, neat folds and extra stitches complete the binding. The tape's linen holds firm, its soft hue framing the tapestry's scene. Pins are eased from the cartoon's wooden frame. The parchment, still faint with charcoal, rustles softly as it lifts free. The weaver brushes away dust, preserving the drawing for possible reuse. With the tapestry unpinned, it is placed face down on a padded board. A larger horsehair brush sweeps its backside, teasing away dust. A barely damp linen cloth glides over the face to remove soot and dye dust. Colors become more vivid with each gentle pass. A steaming rack stands over a simmering cauldron. The tapestry drapes over it, allowing warm mist to relax fibers. Once lightly steamed, a heavy wooden press, 2 oak planks, rests atop, pressing the softened wool into a uniform plane. After cooling, the tapestry is ready for inspection. Under late afternoon light, the weaver examines borders for uniformity, views motifs from front and back to ensure no gaps remain, and compares hues against original roving scraps. Where a pick seems loose, a fine needle tucks it into place. Finally, the tapestry is rolled for storage. A clean linen cloth spreads on a table. The tapestry lies face down upon it and is rolled onto an oiled dowel with even tension. Linen strips secure the roll against drafts. The tapestry rests protected, ready for its next chapter in history. As dusk settles, the workshop inhales a final breath. The tapestry, unrolled and bathed in tallow candlelight, glows with madder reds, indigo blues, mustard yellows, and chestnut browns. Run fingers over its surface, a gentle undulation under each pick, stitches uniform, linen binding steadfast. Recall its journey, fleece sorted and combed, dyes simmered to jewel tones, warp tensioned in an oak frame, shuttle and beater orchestrated in rhythmic breath, midday sustenance shared by the hearth, intricate motifs patiently layered, and finishing touches binding it all together. In daily life, this tapestry will warm stone hearths and adorn noble chambers, gathering patina with each passing season. Its dyes, organically bound, will mellow gracefully over years, each fading hue a testament to time. Through its making, we learn patience, fiber smoothed by gentle persistence, color deepened through slow infusion, structure sustained by balanced tension, beauty emerging from consistent effort, nourishment and camaraderie as vital as labor, and completion made lasting by final acts of care. Carry this calm with you. In moments of decision, recall how the dye master measured every adjustment. When tasks seem overwhelming, remember the weaver's steady beat, one pick at a time. Savor simple flavors as you work toward your goals. Honor small finishing touches that give your efforts endurance. May the hush of these hours wrap around you like a soft woven blanket. Good night, and sleep well.